There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. This is a very commonly used quote, oftentimes credited to Vladimir Lenin, but it is very pertinent to maybe the condition we're now seeing in the economy, finance in general, in terms of the world economic system, perhaps, is just the rate of change of everything suddenly seeming to speed up significantly. A lot has happened in the last week. Silvergate Capital went bust, and then Silicon Valley Bank did as well. The Fed stepped in and did end up bailing out Silicon Valley Bank, although they say that it somehow is not a bailout this time. And they effectively did it with another bank, Signature Bank, that was likely going to face the same fate as Silicon Valley Bank. So the Fed has stepped in. They have effectively bailed out financial institutions again, even though they said that they wouldn't do that this time. And this is effectively a Fed pivot of sorts. Even though they have not stopped officially raising rates, they haven't really addressed that yet. But in this video, I'll really talk about how this year, 2023, is shaping up to be a very good year for precious metals, and why the precious metals markets will likely rally this year on the back of financial distress and the Fed having to step in and paper things over again. Now, if we look at what gold and silver have done in the last 2 years or so, it has been very much so just a bull flag consolidation pattern. The market really has not gone much in either direction. It has largely fluctuated between, say, a plus or minus 10% in the last 2.5 years since the rally during the COVID crash. And this has been somewhat discouraging for investors. It's very hard to find a sector of the stock market that is more overlooked than precious metals, and especially their miners. The miners have definitely experienced lower lows as a result of this consolidation pattern. Now, this has provided a good opportunity for those investors who believe that the Fed will eventually be forced to pivot back to quantitative easing, at least in terms of having to loosen financial conditions again. Also, investors who believe that the Fed cannot tighten on an extremely indebted economy would want to be in the precious metals markets, at least to a certain extent. And because of this, this has provided a good opportunity for investors to get into precious metals. Now, before I get into precious metals, the markets themselves, I'll talk about where the FDIC and the Fed came to with regards to Silvergate Capital and more so with Silicon Valley Bank. So they effectively said that they will protect all deposits of Signature Bank as well as Silicon Valley Bank. Now, Signature Bank actually came up about a day after Silicon Valley Bank went under, and yeah, they would have faced a similar fate as Silicon Valley Bank. Basically just bad investments, bad allocation of capital, combined with the Fed hiking rates and the value of the treasuries that these banks were holding being cut. That all contributed to them being eventually bankrupt. So this is a press release that the Federal Reserve and FDIC just released today. They say the following statement was released by Secretary Janet Yellen, Federal Reserve Board Chair Jerome Powell, and FDIC Chairman Martin Gruenberg. Today we are taking decisive actions to protect the U.S. economy by strengthening public confidence in our banking system. I would more so call it stopping the bleeding on a loss of public confidence in the banking system, but I'll keep going. This step will ensure that the U.S. banking system continues to perform its vital roles of protecting deposits and providing access to credit to households and to businesses in a manner that promotes strong and sustainable economic growth. After receiving a recommendation from the boards of the FDIC and the Federal Reserve and consulting with the President, Secretary Yellen approved actions enabling the FDIC to complete its resolution of Silicon Valley Bank, Santa Clara, California, in a manner that fully protects all depositors. Depositors will have access to all their money starting Monday, coming up March 13th. No losses associated with the resolution of Silicon Valley Bank will be borne by the taxpayer. I wonder how that's going to happen. We are also announcing a similar systemic risk exemption for Signature Bank, New York, which was closed today by its state chartering authority. All depositors of this institution will be made whole. As with the resolution of Silicon Valley Bank, no losses will be borne by the taxpayer. So, it goes on to say that they effectively did step in and bail out these two financial institutions. There's maybe an argument to be made of, why would you bail out these two banks and not Silvergate Capital? But these are definitely the most essential ones. Silvergate was more crypto oriented, but it does go to show that the Fed is still in the business of bailing things out. They have not reversed course there. I definitely do not expect them to reverse course either in terms of their pattern of cutting rates and stimulating through money printing again when things are as they currently are. If they continue to get worse economically, say more financial institutions face issues, which is very likely in my opinion. Even if other economic factors start popping up, unemployment, inflation may be coming down, the Fed will definitely have to re-examine its so-called fight against inflation through hiking rates extremely quickly, because you cannot hike rates as quickly as they have without issues popping up, which they have at this point. So I would be very surprised if the Fed continues on their path of raising rates. I would expect them to, in the near-term future, pause and, if not pivot, begin to cut rates if they see more issues coming up. If this is some sort of a contagion that does spread quickly, in my mind they will have no choice but to cut rates and go back to stimulating, bailing out more institutions, etc. So all of this does set up for a very bullish picture for precious metals. Combined with the technical patterns that have been present in the precious metals market in the last 2 years, the very bullish cup and handle that's present looking back in the last 15 plus years, these are two very solid looking charts, but the fundamentals are even more solid in terms of when you look at past periods of financial uncertainty, of elevated levels of inflation with the Fed being unable to really fight that. That is when gold and silver have basically outperformed everything else. And so this, in my mind, is setting up kind of a perfect storm of events for 2023 being a very good year for the gold and silver markets and the miners. Now, it could be the case where there, for example, maybe there's some sort of market deleveraging event where everybody's selling everything they need to sell in order to raise capital. Financial institutions, mainly speaking for them. We saw this in 2008 during the massive sell-off there, that gold and silver were sold off as well. We also briefly saw this during the COVID sell-off that lasted 6 weeks, but yes, gold and silver were sold off during that period. So it could be the case where we have that happen again, but in both cases they very rapidly regained the attention of investors and rallied significantly. So I would expect gold and silver to be maybe the best performing assets of this year. I would probably have to pick that asset class as the best performing asset class of this coming year, but we will really have to wait and see how it all plays out, how quickly the Fed is able to react, or how quickly they need to react. Do more economic events start popping up with more financial institutions, banks going under or having issues? How severe are these bank runs that everyone seems to be talking about? Are consumers really that frightened at this point? Because the whole psychological aspect of this as well could play in as well. So let me know everything that you guys think about this topic, what the Fed just did with these two banks, bailing them out, how this maybe implies a pivot of some sort in the near-term future, and what this could mean for the precious metals markets. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I hope you all have a great day.